Welcome back to Digital Hauntology. This video is going to be something different. Usually I make videos in one of two styles. I either make straightforward reviews and overviews, and for an example of something like this, you can check out the last video I made on Kana Bridge of Spirits. And the other style of videos that I make is more editorialized, where I use the game that I'm talking about as a jumping off point to discuss other topics and subjects that I find important or at least interesting. And for an example of something like that, please check out my video on Security Breach, where I use that game as a jumping off point to discuss things like liminal space and hauntology. But in this video, I'd like to do something a bit more loose. Typically my process is play a game, write an essay, and then cut a video around it. But with this one, I'd like it to be a little bit more informal. The whole point of me making this channel was that I wanted an excuse to take something that I already do, which is play video games, and use that as an entry point for flexing my creative muscles. And other than that, I would like to use this channel as something of an archive for the thoughts that I've had on games as I finish them. There are so many games that I've played over the years where when I look back on them, I can only remember specific flashes. Things like a character, or a level, or just an overall vibe. But with this channel, the hope is that I will document my thoughts in such a way that I won't forget the big parts of the experiences that I've had. And now that I've been doing that, I also wanted to have fun with this little project. So in this video, I'm going to go over every game that I've covered on this channel and rank them from best to worst. As someone who's played more games than I can realistically count at this point, it isn't uncommon for me to have friends come up to me looking for recommendations. And a question that I always get is, hey, what's the best game you've ever played? And I just don't really always have an answer for that. Sure, I have favorites, but what's the best? So with this video, I'm actually going to start building a list. And I will do a follow-up to this video in this series after every 5 standard videos I make going forward. And hopefully by doing this, when I get that question again, that, hey, what's the best game you've ever played question, I will have an answer. You may disagree with my opinions, and that's fine. You can be wrong, but I know what I'm talking about. And so yeah, I'm here now to build the list of the greatest games of all time, one title at a time, and potentially piss some people off. So without any further ado, on to the rankings. Hi, I'm the dude behind this Digital Hauntology channel. You can call me Haunts, you can call me Mr. Hauntology, or you can just call me by my real name, Nick. As I said in the intro, I'm going to be covering all 10 videos that I've done, and I'm going to be ranking each game based off of the merits as I found them. And the goal is going to be making another video like this every 5 videos from this point. So without any delay, let's get into the list. So the first video that I made, the first game I covered on this channel, was going to be Diablo 2 Resurrected for the PS5. It's important to say PS5 because my experience, it's not going to be the same if you played it on PC. I ran into a couple problems, especially with matchmaking, and then, you know, also having the controller, that there was no mouse and keyboard for that version, which is nuts. But yeah, at this moment, we have Diablo 2 Resurrected as the #1 game of all time. So yeah, let's enjoy it, man, because it's not going to stick around there forever. So the second game that I did was Voice of Cards, The Isle Dragon Roars. And yeah, man, that game was cool. It was definitely a, you know, old school throwback turn-based RPG. The creative director was Yoko Taro, so that's what caught my interest. It had a cool tile-based card style, art style for it. It was the motif that they went with. And it had a Dungeons and Dragons-esque kind of narrator, the game master named Todd Habercorn, which was excellent. The story was definitely pretty straightforward. It was kind of just the queen tells you to go kill a dragon, and it goes from there. But because Yoko Taro was involved, it got pretty dark pretty quick. And the combat was serviceable. It was old school, but the problem I ran into was I was able to break that game wide open after not too long. And so if we're comparing it to Diablo 2 Resurrected, I mean, Diablo 2 basically invented a freaking genre. This is a pretty good remaster of it. Beautiful. No. I can't in good faith say that that game is better. So at this point, we're going to say Voice of Cards. And then I think it's The Isle. Yeah, sorry guys, I'm bad at typing. Dragon Roars. Yeah, that looks about right. I can't in good faith say that Voice of Cards 1 is better than Diablo 2 Resurrected. So Diablo 2, still the best game of all time. So the third video that I made on this channel was for Astro's Playroom. It was a PS5 exclusive. It was packed in on the PS5. Cool little platformer. It was mostly used as a way to kind of show off the new hardware, the new PlayStation 5 controller, and as a result, it was crazy novel. I really haven't had an experience like that. The way that the controller conveyed motion and conveyed, resistance, and then the really cool, just every aspect of it. You would have like hailstones hitting your umbrella, and you could feel it in the controller. You would also hear the noise coming out of the mic. And tight platforming, very tight platforming, and a pretty cool just like homage to all the cool games and all the cool tech Sony has made over the years. I legitimately love this game. And, I just can't say that Diablo 2 is better than it. I know that's a crazy opinion. I know that Diablo 2 is a classic forever, but I'm not covering Diablo 2. I'm covering Resurrected as a game that came out just a couple years ago, or a year ago. No, I think Astro's Playroom did something bold, did something well executed, and again, I'm comparing it to the PS5 version. Maybe I would have a slightly different opinion if I had covered it on PC and was still able to use Battle.net and do all that, but as of right now, I'm going to go with my gut here, and I'm going to say, I do this. Okay. So now, oh, there's an apostrophe missing. That looks like I'm talking about baseball team or some bullshit. Okay, so now we're on to Visage. Visage is amazing. Visage is one of the few games that made me believe in horror video games again. For so long, horror games have kind of fallen into that Five Nights at Freddy's kind of vibe, where it's about opaque storytelling, it's about kind of extended lore. And to have Visage be as compact as it was, as scary as it was, as just expertly executed as it was, I can't say I've played a horror game better than Visage. Any horror game that I've played that even comes close kind of belongs to a separate genre as well as horror. Stuff like Alan Wake, stuff like Shadows of the Damned. But as far as straight horror goes, Visage is in another freaking realm. So I'm going to say, without a doubt, Visage is better than all the games on this list. I know it's weird comparing different genres. I know that in a fair world we would really talk about it, but I've already given these games their shine. I've already done the reviews. I've already talked about them at length. This is my list for what I think the best game of all time is. And there's not a list that exists for me that doesn't have Visage at the top of right now. Clearly, there's a lot more games. We'll see if Visage sticks around, but does it beat Astro's Playroom? Hell yeah. Does it beat Diablo 2 Resurrected? Yeah, we're gonna do this. So let's go here. Okay, so after that, we had a stealth sequel to Voice of Cards. And yeah, right now Voice of Cards is the worst game on this list. So how does a sequel that came out, geez, like only a couple months later, how does that compare to the original? It was way better than that game. Voice of Cards 2 is better than the first in every way. And in a lot of ways, it is one of my favorite, one of these kind of lower scale, kind of cheaper to make RPGs that have been popping up. It was incredible. It was a slower burn, but the story really left its mark on me. I adored it. The combat was slick. I swear, like, there is a super boss in that game that is one of my favorite encounters in almost any RPG I've ever played. It was like a 45-minute just damage mitigation exam. I loved the party composition. I loved the characters. The new game master, he wasn't as good as Todd, but it was still great. And then the story, like, the story was crazy. You just go from island to island to island, and each one had its own self-contained story, new characters, and it just kept going. Way longer than the first game, way better than the first game. I recommend Isle Dragon 2 to almost anybody. That's the Forsaken Maiden. Voice of Cards, the Forsaken Maiden. I'm going to confidently say that was one of my favorites in recent years. So Visage, it's not better than Visage. I'm not crazy, man. Visage is a tour de force. Like, Visage is something that is once in a lifetime horror game. Like, I'm waiting for what the studio does now, Sad Square Studios. But is it better than Astro? Yeah. Voice of Cards 2, Forsaken Maiden. It's definitely better than Astro's Playroom. Not by a whole lot. Astro's Playroom is it's incredible. I recommend it. I don't recommend buying a PS5 solely for it, but if you get a PS5, it's on there and play that shit. The Voice of Cards, cool. So Visage stays at number 1, and for good reason. And we've got Voice of Cards 2 right behind it, with Voice of Cards 1 being the worst game of all time as of right now. This is a tough list, you know. It's only going to get tougher when I start covering higher profile games. You think you have an opinion now, with, you know, Diablo 2 as low as it is. Imagine how you're going to feel when I start putting games like Metal Gear Solid or Final Fantasy VII on this list. It's going to get cutthroat pretty fast, but we're starting off easy with these 10. A lot of these are kind of lower impact games, but that's because this channel just started. I'm going to get out of control soon. So now the video that I did after that was Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origins. You know, the chaos fucking simulator. I like that game. I like it a lot. It was well made. I think people compared it a little too carefully to Dark Souls when I thought it was more hack and slashy. It's definitely more Neo. It's made by that same team. Cool world, cool designs for the enemies, crazy like ability to just customize your fighting style. Having Jack pop up in the cutscenes with all the fucking stupid shit he was wearing was beautiful. I love that part. And the story recontextualized the first Final Fantasy in a way that I felt connected to that story for the first time ever. I'm not old enough to remember playing Final Fantasy 1 when it came out, and everything that's come out of that series since then has been so much bigger, so much more impactful. But to now kind of have this retcon that retells the events of Final Fantasy 1 and has it where you give a shit, kudos to the game. I loved it. Like, I really enjoyed it. I didn't play that game to completion. By the time I got to like the highest difficulties, the chaos difficulty, I lost interest. So there's definitely a lot more game there than I can confidently say that I've seen everything. But I played through the story, I think, on normal and hard mode. I definitely kitted out my character. I definitely experimented with every class. I, you know, ran through the side missions and all that. And good game. Very good game. So where do we place it? I think that it's probably better than Astro's Playroom still. Not by a lot. Like, Astro's Playroom's really good, guys. But yeah, no, I'm gonna place it at the number 3 spot. We're gonna go with Ranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin. Great game. Go play it. I believe the DLC, if it hasn't come out already, it's around the corner. I know the season pass was sold right around the time it came out, and I think we're about there. So, okay. 6 games. Got 4 more left. Vampire Survivors is what I covered next. And at the time that I covered Vampire Survivors, this was 4 months ago. We are about to release the 1.0 version of this game now. And as a result, so much content has been added to it. New characters, final bosses, new levels, crazy weapons, limit breaking where you just can make your enemy, or you can make your attacks just fill up the entire screen and attack like instant cooldown. But at the end of the day, it's a very simple game to understand. You kind of play a Smash TV game, you run your guy around and you try not to get got, and you last for, 30 minutes and then you get got anyways. But considering that this is made by one dude, geez, like, the music is killer, the conceit is cool, the fact that it's just been growing every month, every week it seems like I go onto Steam and it's just like, hey, there's a new version. And I've been playing every update as they come out, and this game just has kept on giving. I'm endlessly impressed with what they've done here. Great game. I recommend it to anybody, and considering how cheap it has been, I think they're about to jack up the price with the 1.0, so hopefully you got in at the $3 mark. But even then, I don't think they're gonna rob you. This is a passion project. So where do we put that game on this list, man? Where do we put it? It's definitely not top of the list material. I can't put it there. I think that this is just another case where Astro's Playroom just gets bumped down a little further. As much as I love that game, I think that it's Stranger of Paradise is so much more fleshed out. In a lot of ways, it's a very similar game about trying out different builds and seeing, how much damage you can do. And given the production level and given the story and everything that they've done, I can't say Stranger of Paradise isn't slightly better. But Vampire Survivors, like, it's not going to drop super far on my list when this thing gets more and more populated. This is a really terrific game. I recommend it to anyone. But at this point, we're going to put that in the number 4 spot. I'm comfortable with that. Okay, so we've got the list. We've got 7 deep now. And 3 to go, with Visage as the best game of all time and Voice of Guards, the Isle Dragon Roars, as the absolute worst game I've ever played. Tough crowd, man. Tough crowd. So, next game. Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. This is an awkward situation for me because I believe that's the best video I've made so far. I'm proudest of it, but I spent the majority of that 30-minute video not talking about this game. This game is shit, dude. Like, I want to love it. There are so many cool things. The entire area, the Pizzaplex, I adore it. I think it's bold and beautiful and smart, but playing this game just sucks. Like, anytime you walk out, there's a risk of getting caught. You have manual save spots in a 2021, or when was this game made? 2021, the end of it. We're still doing that shit, huh? No. There is stuff to love about the game, and I'm probably gonna go back to it once they drop the next update, or the one that comes with the free DLC. I'm curious to see if they can fix this game, but as it stands, I confidently put FNAF Security Breach as the worst game of all time. Take a load off. Voice of Cards 1. Yeah, you're not that bad. All right. So, our 9th game now, Titan Chaser. You've not heard of this. Unless you've watched my video, you've probably not heard of this game. bizarre game out of Ukraine. You drive around in a car at night, nobody around, and you try to scare titans away from your neighborhood. It's it's a fever dream. It's beautiful. You just cruise around, nothing hurts you. Kind of got a Shadow of the Colossus kind of vibe to it. Great music. Incredible, just public domain kind of serialized radio dramas are the soundtrack while you just cruise around. Um, Everything in this game is so amateurishly made, but it's like kind of got that just soul of a game so much larger than it. And this is my favorite decompression game I've ever played. I've compared it to things like Proteus, I compared it to things like Dear Esther, but it nails this vibe that like I think about this game all the time. And I bought it on my Switch so that I can like kind of fall asleep to it occasionally. I This is the weird one where it's like I feel so strongly about it, but I don't know if there's anyone I really feel confident recommending it to. If you like what I like, you'll love this. If you don't like what I like, you're probably going to walk away from this thing within 5 minutes. But okay, where do we put that? It's not better than Visage. Is it better than Vampire Survivors? This is my list, right? This is my list. Um, I'm putting it in the number 3 spot right now. Stranger Paradise is amazing, right? But it is kind of a hack and slash Neo style game. We have no shortage of these. And the main characters, they're all interesting. Everything's fun about this game, but game has this kind of like, you know, B game energy. Yeah, Titan Chaser moved me. It made me want to be a Titan Chaser. It made me want to have the job that you have in that game. It permeated my dreams. It made me think about my own drives like differently. Driving around at night, like it was like watching a good horror movie, like a Nightmare on Elm Street, and all of a sudden you're afraid to sleep again because you're like, oh, Freddy's gonna get me. This game made me recontextualize the world around me in the way that like fine art does. It's not going to be for all of you. It's not better than Voice of Cards, the Forsaken Man. That is like amazing RPG, but the rest of this list in a lot of ways to me is video game ass video games, and I love them. I think they're great. But Titan Chaser, Visage, those those are works of art, and some of what Voice of Cards the Forsaken Maiden did, especially with like how they were able to use some of these card motifs to really get across like what these characters' motivations were. I'm comfortable with that. All right. And now the last game on my list. Kena the Bridge of Spirits. It's tough, man. It's definitely better than FNAF, better than Diablo 2. It's better than Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin. I mean, Kena is essentially a kind of Legend of Zelda style game, kind of, a Jack and Daxter style game. It's the way that I broke it down in my review is this is the childhood game that you wish you had now that you're grown up. Um, it's definitely made by people that have been influenced by all of the cool stuff that's come on, before Jack and Daxter, Half-Life. I broke down the identity of this game in a lot of ways during the video, but what gives this game the heart and soul is really how tonally consistent it is. Beautiful animations, beautiful characters. The tone of this game is so freaking bleak but hopeful at the same time. The ending just kind of floored me. The combat evolves in such a way that it starts off kind of loose, kind of Dark Soulsy, but by the end you are just throwing out attacks, you are dodging through things, you are just on this. It's great. It's incredible, and for the time being, I don't see a place on this list. I don't see this list existing without Kana as number 1 right now. So I'm putting Kana as number 1 over Visage. If you know anything about me, which you probably don't, but if you watch my videos, you will see that, like, I'm not a horror guy. Not in the slightest. I don't give a shit about horror games. Visage made me care about horror games in a way that I've never cared before. It is one of the best games I've ever played. Even as this list goes to include things that I hold near and dear to my heart, it's gonna get crazy when I start putting in the Final Fantasies and the Drakengard 3s and the Bioshocks and all the stuff that I grew up on, that I consider to be ace. But this game right now, Kana, Bridge of Spirits, I cannot look at this list and say that any of these experiences are better. Like, I can't look at this list without Kana as the number 1 spot. It's a close call, but those top 3, that top 4 really, like, I have a special place in my heart for Titan Chaser. But that top 3, I think definitely those are the best games I've played this year. And we're going to keep going forward. I'm going to look back. The next game I'm going to be doing is going to actually be the follow-up to the Voice of Cards. They just released a 3rd one. So I'll be making a video on that next. And then afterwards, I'm thinking I'm going to get a little weird. Like, I think I'm going to start looking at some old classics and start making this list a little bit more cutthroat as time goes on. But if you've enjoyed this, I'm going to be doing another one after I've made 5 more of my essays. And I hope you enjoyed it. I've had a lot of fun with this. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.